Are you looking to get ready, be prepared, and transform your financial future? Then you've come to the right place. This is the Get Ready Money Podcast with Tony Stewart, where Tony has insightful conversations with financial experts who are changing the way we think about money. Catch up on the latest financial trends and hear practical advice from Tony and his expert guests so you can build healthy habits that work. Be empowered with tips for implementing small changes that can have a big impact on your financial future. So sit back and get ready to hear from today's guest.
Welcome to the Get Ready Money Podcast, changing the way we think about money. I'm pleased to be joined today by Larry Sprung. Larry is a wealth advisor and founder of Mitlin Financial, as well as an author. In this episode, we'll be discussing Larry's thoughts on how we change the way we think about money and mindset. Larry, welcome to the Get Ready Money Podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tony. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, excited for this conversation. So let's jump in. This is a question I always ask everybody. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your origin story?
Yeah, so I'm first and foremost, I'm a dad of two boys, 20 and 17-year-old, and a husband to Denise, who's my wife of going on 23 years. And I happen to be in the wealth management profession, which I think is one of the best professions in the world, and have been here since 96 after, leaving college. And my main impetus really for entering this profession was really my family situation. I watched my dad at a very early age. My mom was diagnosed with cancer. I was about 13 years old, 12 or 13 when she was diagnosed. And I saw my dad, who was a New York City school teacher, juggling being a teacher, having, at that time, it wasn't called the side gig, but now it's called the side gig, had a couple of side gigs, and taking care of my mom, all these things. And he did not have an advisor. And not that, having an advisor would have mitigated anything that he was going through or my mom's situation. But I always felt like if he had somebody to help him, to guide him, to maybe take some of the burden off of his shoulders, it would have been helpful. So when I was introduced to this profession in college and through an internship, it really resonated with me. I really enjoyed being able to help people. I identified with it as an opportunity to help people like my dad. And, hopefully everybody wasn't like my dad, where they were going through a critical financial event that wasn't a happy one. Hopefully we could help them through happy ones, like getting married and buying houses and having babies. And it's been a very rewarding career. And that's really how it all got started, was because of, seeing my own family situation and what they went through growing up.
Well, that's a great story. And I think you bring up something that to me has become a bigger part of, the financial literacy movement and everything, is that we're guides for people. We help people through challenging times. We also help them during happy times, but we're really helping them. And our value is when we help them through those challenging times. That's a great story. I notice you have a Mitlin Money Mindset shirt, background. Tell us a little bit, what is the Mitlin Mindset?
Yeah, so Mitlin Money Mindset's the name of my podcast, which we launched in October of 2020. I think as of today, we're about 135 episodes in. And it's just really given me an opportunity to speak with a lot of great people that are connected to the profession and not connected to the profession. And really, the guests that we have, more or less fall into one of three buckets. One is people who are entrepreneurs, business owners, because I love hearing great entrepreneurial stories. It amazes me what people do for a living sometimes. And then I've had the opportunity to have a lot of athletes on, which I think is also a similar mindset to that of an entrepreneur. And then the third kind of bucket of guests are really related to mental health and, promoting and talking about mental health in a positive way and, reducing stigma and raising awareness. So we talk a lot in basically all of these groups, a lot of what we do on a regular basis is surrounded by mindset. And being that I'm in the financial profession, money mindset was a natural title. I think that a lot of what you brought up in terms of financial literacy, a lot of that has to do with mindset and, creating a conversation very early on in terms of getting people acclimated, comfortable with money, how to treat it, how to use it, what's right, what may be wrong, and understanding how that can impact things. And one of the things that we try to do here is, many times we're not looking to work with families for a year or 6 months. We're really looking to work with families for multiple generations. And when we have the opportunity to work with a family and then work with their kids and then get introduced to the grandkids, you think about the impact that you have on that family. It's truly multi-generational, and it's going to have an impact that's going to live well beyond my life, which is, really, really rewarding. So the podcast is one small piece of that, but it really resonates to that same goal that we're trying to accomplish here as a firm and as a steward for the families that we serve.
There's that word again, another synonym for guide. So, well, and I think, when you talk about multi-generational relationships, that a lot of it is you become a counselor more so than it's all about the stocks and allocating the stocks, is that you're helping people see the bigger picture and make that jump. So that's fantastic.
Tony, I'm sorry. One of the things one of the things that we talk about is we have like a financial planning or a financial pyramid that is similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs starts with your basic needs, food, water, shelter, and then moves all the way up the pyramid to enlightenment, right? So we have a similar financial pyramid similar to that, which starts out with, stock selection, asset allocation, tax. These are all things that are table stakes for our profession. Everybody should be able to do that stuff. And that's not where we add a lot of value. We add value there, but not a lot of value. Where we're adding value is on those higher rungs, letting them and having them meet their goals and objectives, right? Saving time on spending time on planning, giving them order and feeling like they have more organization and control. And ultimately we want to lead them up to that highest point, which is, going after life's purpose and meaning, whatever that is for them. And also leaving a legacy if that's something they're interested in, whether that's for their family or some charitable organization. And that's where we try to focus the majority of our time with the families we serve, because we want to be in that area, because that's where we add the greatest deal of value. It's not on that stock selection, which is at that, needs area of that pyramid.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think you said something really powerful about, life purpose, because I think that's really important, is understanding, what are your clients really trying to achieve? What do they really want to get out of this? And nobody comes in, at least in my experience, and has something very specific. It's more general, like, how do I solve this issue? I have a challenge. Can you help me meet that challenge? And we get so caught up in like, well, here's the best product. And that's not really what clients are looking for. Then it becomes transactional rather than relationship based. Yeah. So one of the questions, I'm sure you get this, I get this as an author, is, what inspired you to write Financial Planning Made Personal: How to Create Joy in the Mindset for Success?
Yes, Tony, that's a great question. And that was something, that was in the works for probably 10 years. Not necessarily I started it 10 years ago and finally came out. Writing a book and being an author was something inherently I wanted to do for a very long time. And it wasn't until recently that I actually had the time to do it. And the things that I always came back to that I found when I was speaking with and chatting with the families that we work with, a lot of our conversations came back to, hey, I saw this on TV, or I heard about this on the radio, or saw this in the news. Why aren't I, or should I be doing that? And many times it was probably not right for them. And, we found always that financial planning is very personal, right? What works for one family may not work for another. So it was an idea that I had germinating and really came out of the relationships that we had. And I finally had the time, effort, and energy to actually put the book together and put it out this year, which was fantastic. So a lot of it is driven around financial planning is very personal. There's not, although there are general rules, it doesn't mean that everybody should follow these general rules. It may be a starting point, and then you have to refine it for yourself and your family and what's in their best interest and figure that out. And we talk a lot about working with a fiduciary advisor to help navigate that space if it's something that you're not comfortable doing that on your own. And quite frankly, the joy part came out of it where, a lot of times advisors are just very money focused, right? You're talking about a goal and it's all about the money. And we try to focus, yes, the money is important and you need that, but really the money is a tool to create joy in your life. And, our final question that we ask all of our guests on my podcast is, what did you do today that brought you joy? And, because that in the end is what it's all about, is what can these monies or these assets or what your life's work done accumulating, what can that do for you in bringing joy to your life? And that may be different, and it is different for everybody. To somebody, it may be buying a lake house. To somebody else, it may be for paying for their grandchild's education. Everybody has a different. So financial planning is very personal. The joy that's created from it, it's not just the money, it's also the joy. And we basically put those together and created the book, Financial Planning Made Personal, which I finally was able to publish this year. And we're super excited about that.
Well, awesome. And congratulations on getting a book published.
Thank you.
It's a project. So, but I love what you're saying is that, there's a reason why it's called personal finance, is that it is personal. And we all have our own definition. And I'm with you 100%, is that I think, we have to think about what brings our clients joy, that's really their goals, is, rather than a number. Numbers are great. You want your, savings rate to be X percent or whatever, but really it's about, is that going to bring you joy? Is it enough? So that's awesome. I love it. And to everybody watching and listening, and we'll talk about this at the end, is we'll talk about where you can pick up a copy of Larry's book. So Larry, let's get into the get ready questions. Is what basic money concept do you wish people knew?
Well, I think my money concept, people know it. I just don't think they follow it. I think that happens with a lot of these things. And, we're big believers, and we talk about it even in the book, is pay yourself first. I'm a big believer in The Richest Man in Babylon. I've read that book a number of times, and it just hammers home the concept of paying yourself first. And I think it's really troubling that most people go through life, they get their paycheck, they pay all their bills, they pay everybody else, and they forget about themselves. And I think that is really constructed backwards, and we really have to, change our mindset with regard to that, figure out an amount that we want to pay ourselves first. And in Richest Man in Babylon, they talk a lot about 10% is that number. So if you're going to use that number, pay yourself 10% first, and then figure out a way to use the other 90% to pay those bills and those other obligations that you have. We have an interesting way as humans to be able to adapt and adopt to our surroundings and our circumstances. And I think in many ways, if you're spending 100% of your income today and you get a 10% raise, we could very easily figure out a way to just spend that 110% and still never pay ourselves that additional 10. So do it the other way around. Pay yourself first, live on the remainder, figure out what you may or may not need to cut, and put that 10% to good use. Whether if you're behind on your retirement savings, allocate more money there. If you're behind on your emergency fund savings, put money there. That's a personal decision. But I think we're the most important people in our own lives. So pay ourselves first is a money concept that I think people have a tendency of knowing, but often gets overlooked and not thought about.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the first thing that comes to mind for me is, on airplanes where they say, put on your mask first, is that, you have to take care of your needs first, because otherwise you'll pay down the road if you don't pay yourself first, because you won't have your emergency fund. You won't have enough money saved for financial independence because you'll always be paying somebody else. So that's awesome advice. So Larry, what's one simple thing you can do each year to set yourself up for financial success?
Yeah, you have great questions, Tony, I got to tell you. But yeah, I mean, there are so many things that you can do. One little thing that you can do is just increase whatever your savings is, whatever your most important area is, increase it by 1, 2, 3, 4%. Figure out a number, increase it. Many times we think that making that change is going to be very troublesome. And in most of the time, we're able to adopt and adapt to it, and it's not. So just try to increase it and work towards those goals just a little bit faster each year. And I think dovetailed to that is every year, take a look at your budget. Okay. We're not going to tell you as a firm, and we talk about this in the book also, budget doesn't have to be a dirty word. We want you to have joy in your life. We want you to get joy out of what you're doing. But, typically everybody, including myself today, we have expenses that are included in our budget, whether it be monthly or annual, that we don't need, we're not using, doesn't add joy to our life. So if that's the case, cut them out and then reallocate that money to better use. I think if you do those two things, you'll put yourself light years ahead of where you are today, 2, 3, 4 years from now, because you're incrementally putting yourself in a better place.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's something that's often missed. And that's behind the books Get Ready that I've written is, the whole thing about organizing and monitoring is we so often think about, future products and services and things we can add on rather than going back and looking through and going, oh, I have that old insurance policy that I no longer need. I have a credit card for a store where I never go anymore. And, we have all these little odds and ends, a 401k at your old employer, that is just floating out there. And so that's great advice, is to cut out those things that really don't serve a purpose and don't meet your current goals today. I think that's the other thing too, is that people shift, and what they want to accomplish and what brings them joy today is not the same thing as yesterday. So, what is one habit that people can change when it comes to their money?
Yeah, I think there are probably a lot of habits we could all change, with our money. I don't think it's just one. I think one of the biggest things that we kind of talked about earlier is, financial literacy. I find that extremely important and valuable, right? And I've heard for the 20 plus years that I've been in this profession that, hey, financial literacy is coming, right? I've been hearing this forever. And people are saying, oh, it's up to the education system. It's up to the, but let me tell you, I don't think it's ever going to change. I think it might get incrementally a little bit better, but I don't think it's going to we're going to see a seismic shift. But I think one habit is to start working with the next generation and start imparting and educating them on financial literacy, because that is something that's going to impact things well beyond your financial future and generations to come. And if you can't do that yourself because you just don't have the skills, the time, or the energy, then I think you have to leverage and use folks like us, like a fiduciary advisor, to help educate them, because that is a habit. If you start early, instilling that habit early on, it's going to benefit, like I said, for generations to come. And I'll share a quick story. When my oldest son became 14, we made a deal with him that he would work a little bit during the summer. And basically we asked that he put in all the money from his summer job into a Roth IRA. And in exchange for him doing that, what we would do is basically support him through the summer. So he didn't have to pay for, his DoorDash or anything like that. And what that's done now is, 6 years later, he has a significant amount of money saved up in his Roth IRA and his retirement accounts. But he went to work recently for a new employer and there was a 403B offering for it. So what did he do? He said, you know what, this is extra money. I don't really need it. And he elected to put in the maximum percentage, which was 75% of his pay, into that plan. Now, my point isn't that he's putting all this money away. The point is, by instilling that early habit in him in 14 and encouraging him, and I'm not saying every family has the ability to do what I just recommended, but it could even be in a small way. Get your child to put away 25, 50, something. Just get them in that mindset of starting to save for their future. It pays huge dividends, pun intended, down the road. So I think those are the kinds of habits that can hugely impact not only yourself, your family, but, again, generations to come. And then they start telling their friends too. And then they start, well, what's this about? So it creates this conversation that is extremely helpful for, everybody's financial future.
Yeah, no, that's powerful advice. I think one thing you said in there that I want to emphasize is encouraging them. I think that's something that's often missed. Just not only in financial services, but in life in general, is to encourage people when they're doing something well, when they're making a positive change. Say, hey, good job. This is working. You're doing it. And that to me is what's really going to cause them to go back and do it again, because you encourage your son. So what happened the next time he was presented with an opportunity is he jumped on it, because it was a positive mindset to him. So that's awesome.
And I think we have to have an open mind, right, Tony? Because I'll give you another example. My son came to me a couple of years ago whenever he was hearing all about Bitcoin and crypto and all this. And he said, hey, I want to buy some crypto. I said, all right, I don't know much about it. I said, why don't we do this? I said, why don't we each open an account and we'll put like $100 into cryptocurrency and we'll see what happens. We'll talk about it. So we did it. We put $100 each. I figured if he lost it, I lost it. It really wouldn't affect our lives. But what it's done is it's given us an interest around that. We have conversation around it. We talk about it. And most importantly is we've learned a lot about it, because although we don't have a huge stake in it, it gives us a reason to keep on top of it and learn more. So it's created a very nice process with him. And, just because people are talking about it, he's also learned through some of the volatility that maybe it wasn't as great as everybody was talking about, or, so it gives a different perspective, which is always good too.
Well, and I think you highlighted something there is volatility. It gave him a real life lesson in an extremely volatile asset, where you could have him watch a video on volatility and maybe he'll get something out of it, maybe not. He won't absorb it. But now living it, he's going to, really take that to heart and really remember, what does it feel like with volatility? Did I like that?
Right.
And so that's a powerful lesson. So Larry, what money myth are you trying to break?
Yeah, there's so many. Again, there are so many of these money myths. I think one that I talk about in the book. I could probably talk to that is, there's this myth that, and maybe the number's higher now, but I remember growing up, and maybe I'm dating myself. People used to talk about, you need $1 million for retirement, and if you have $1 million, you'll be set. And the reality is that's a complete myth. If you're going to need $50,000 a year in retirement because that's the lifestyle that you want to live, versus $150,000 a year, those are going to be two very different sums of money that you're going to need for retirement. So there is no set number. You really have to, go through the planning process and figure out what you're going to need for retirement for you and your family. And I think that's, a lot of the things that we hear about in general terms tend to be myths. They might be right for somebody. There's somebody that will work for, but the vast majority of people, it will not. And it's also, somewhat geographic, right? Here in New York, most people aren't going to be able to live on $50,000 a year in retirement. It's going to be probably closer to 100, unless they're deciding to relocate. So that $1 million that was talked about when I was growing up, that's not really something that really works today. And I don't know that it even worked then. I wasn't something that I was really cognizant of or paying attention to. But I do know now that it's very personal, and you have to really figure out where your income's coming from and what your needs are going to be, and then figure out what that goal is that you need to accumulate to make sure that you're in a good spot for you and your family when and if that period comes to fruition.
Yeah, well, that's great. And I think that emphasizes your point earlier about personal finance. And we don't even get into the conversation about safe withdrawal rates. So we'll leave that for another show.
I don't know if I've heard they blew that out of the window too, right? So
yeah, I keep hearing like, well, maybe it's not, maybe it should be 4.5, maybe it's 3.8. I mean, who knows? It's personal. And it depends on the market. Too many things there. So, let's get out the time machine for a minute. What advice would you give your younger self if you could go back in time, knowing what you know now about money?
Yeah, that's another great question. I mean, in terms of, one thing that I in recent years that I've come to the conclusion on that I wish, which is tied to money to a great degree, which I wish I could impart upon my younger self or could have imparted upon, is this whole construct around retirement. I think it's crazy. And as I get older, I think it's even crazier to think about, how we're kind of taught or led to believe that we're going to go, get our education and then come out and work for 30, 40 years. And then all of a sudden we get to pump the brakes and enjoy life. And I started doing this in my younger years for sure, not to the degree that I'm doing it now. And I wish I even started earlier. But, this whole construct is crazy to me. I think that we have to change the narrative. We have to change the mindset around that. And it has to be more of a work-life harmony. I don't say work-life balance because, in my opinion, balance gives you the impression that you have to give up something to get something. I think that there's got to be a way that you can have work-life harmony where everything works together and you can accomplish all the goals that you want to accomplish. And it doesn't have to be in that 20, 30, 40-year period that you're, burning out 60, 70, 80 hours a week. There's got to be some kind of happy medium in there that allows you to do all those things. And maybe retirement for you is not stopping at all. Maybe it's just slowing down. Maybe it's working on your terms or doing less. So I would have had that conversation much earlier on. I think that because of my upbringing and seeing my mom ill and passing away at a very young age, I think that instilled some of that in me. I don't think I started realizing it till later in life. And I probably tell myself a lot earlier that this should be the case, again, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. I've started to go into that area myself is that, retirement is also very personal. And I've started talking about it more as financial independence. When you have reached the number where you feel like you're financially independent, that's really what you're striving for. Because like you said, is a lot of people are working into their 70s and 80s, maybe not full time, but they're still doing something that's bringing in some income or just doing something that's volunteering. Is they're not pumping the brakes right at 65. In fact, I don't know very many people who have pumped the brakes on their 65th birthday and go, today's the day I'm out of here. It just doesn't happen much.
I agree with you. And I think that the greater media will give you the impression that people are working longer because they need the money, they need the financial stability. And listen, I don't want to minimize anybody or anything. There are certainly people that have to work well into their 60s and 70s for their financial stability. There definitely are. But at the same time, I think there are many people that are working later and longer not because they have to financially, but because they want to. And also, I think going back to my comments earlier about it not being all about the money for retirement purposes, and having that financial number, the other part of it is I don't think we're doing a great job preparing ourselves and preparing our families that we work with for the mental and social aspects of retirement and slowing down. So there are a lot of people that, they can't fill that 40, 50-hour void if and when they stop or start slowing down. So just like they start planning for a number that they need for income in retirement, they also 10, 15 years out should start planning on how they're going to handle it from a mental and social aspect in terms of their retirement as well. It's just as important.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So, so to wrap up, Larry, what is your number one tip on changing the way we think about money?
Pay yourself early. Pay yourself first. Those are the two things. I think we end up, worrying about money later and later because we wait later and later. And I think we really have to start earlier. And if we started earlier and utilize, compound interest to our benefit and to our benefit, it would be hugely beneficial for us and important. So I think we have to start early. And to do that, we have to make sure people have the financial education to do that and be ready and prepared. You can't wait. You can't have this mindset where you're going to wait till your income goes up, because usually when your income goes up, usually there are other things pulling on that income as well, whether it's you bought a house and now you have a mortgage, whether you have a spouse, whether you have kids. So while you're young, you have the ability to do it and you have the income, put it away and start early, because it's going to only benefit you in the long run. So we need to just change that mindset holistically. And I think we'll be in a much better spot financially.
Yeah, I love that. And it cuts down on the lifestyle creep if you're paying yourself first.
Right.
Then you're not getting that bigger house right away because maybe, because you've put your money into savings and you don't have money to buy the bigger house, which you probably don't need in many cases. So that's awesome advice. So where can people learn more about you and pick up a copy of Financial Planning Made Personal?
Yeah. So, the easiest way is our website, mitlinfinancial.com. I'm on there. If you Google my name, Lawrence Sprung, I'm on every basically social media channel there is. Feel free to reach out and connect. The book is, the easiest place is to go to financialplanningmadepersonal.com, or you could go to the usual channels like Amazon or Barnes and Noble, where you'll find the hard copy, hard paperback and Kindle versions or electronic versions as well.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, Larry. And for everybody tuning in, I'll have links to find Larry's website as well as to where to pick up a copy of his book. So, Larry, thank you very much for coming on the Get Ready Money podcast.
Thank you so much, Tony. I love what you're doing here, and I appreciate you, and make it a great day.
Yeah, you as well. You're doing great work. And thanks everybody for tuning in to the Get Ready Money podcast. Please remember to subscribe. Until next time.